Hi guys, so I in the past have had a lot of people ask me how to wire wrap, and I've had the idea to do some videos for a while, and I figured I would go ahead and give it a try. This is mostly just a practice video, just to kind of put it out there and see how it does. And I probably won't talk the entire time, but I will talk for a little while I'm getting started and just telling you what wire I use. So I'm going to be wrapping this Red Jasper coffin. And my favorite wire to use, I mix it up between copper and the silver. But I mostly use, this is 20 gauge copper wire from Rio Grande. And I usually cut about 3 pieces of the square wire that are a little over 12 inches long. And then I also use the half round 19 gauge copper wire from Rio Grande. So I cut one piece of it, and that I wrap around these 3 pieces to hold them together. So I'll go ahead and get started. First, I line them all up and make sure that they're all even with each other. And then I find the center point and I wrap it side by side where they're flat against each other. And after I get a couple of wraps together, I go ahead and grab some pliers and clamp them down tight. So what I usually do, especially with something like this where it has a flat bottom, I'll hold it up and I'll make sure that this is just a little bit shorter than the bottom of the stone. So I'm probably going to take one off. And then I cut the wire right behind to where the end of the wire isn't sticking out at all. And then I clamp it down. So then it should look like that. And then this one I will push the wire in just a little bit, clamp it a little tighter, and then cut it just a little bit to where you can wrap it around the back. And then clamp it down. And so that's what it should look like when you're done. And I'll straighten the wires out just a little bit to where they're not so. And then it fits right there on the bottom. Sometimes I'll go ahead and just go back over and make sure that they're all tightened down just a little. So then my next step is I separate the wires like this. I pull these out straight, and then I pull these out straight. And I leave these two center wires sticking straight out like that. And then I flip it over to where these wire, like the ends of the wires where we wrapped them around the bottom. And I put the stone right here in the center. And I fold these wires around the stone. But sometimes the base wants to act up a little bit, so I take my pliers and I kind of straighten it up just a little. And then it should be fine. And then put the stone in place. And I kind of hold the stone. I press it against the base as hard as I can. Well, not too hard, but as hard as I can, while pulling on all four of the front and back wires. And I try and push them in front. And sometimes I'll even go back and kind of readjust the base just a little bit if it's still not flat up against it. So then I'll look at the front and see how it looks. And then flip it over and look on the back. And then what I do is I bring these side wires up flat. And it's nice with these coffins because, or with certain stones, because some of them do have flat edges. Sometimes they're rounded and it's a little harder to get the wires to stay. And I'll push them up against the sides and then fold them in flat against these up here. And kind of pinch up here. And there you've got your shape. So then I just make sure that they're pretty close up here at the top. And what I'll do is take my pliers and kind of pinch just a little, not too much, because then the wires will slide off. Okay, and then I'll take my pliers and pinch right here too, just to kind of really make sure that they hold the stone in place. And then what I do is I cut a piece of half hard 19 gauge round wire from from Rio Grande, and just a pretty small piece. It doesn't have to be huge. And while I'm holding the frame in place, I take this and I hold it with my thumb against all those wires, and I try to kind of keep those wires in place too, because I'm going to separate them here in just a minute. And then I just wrap it around a few times. As tight or as close to the base as I can get it. And I bring this around here. And I take my needle nose pliers and right there where that hole is, I tuck the wire in there You want to kind of round it so it comes out the other side easily. And then I'll cut a little bit off of this so there's not so much wire there. And then I will flatten it and kind of tuck it in to where it doesn't stick out and poke you. Okay, so now you've got this. And I usually will try to make sure that this is scooted down as much as possible because it will slide up in the process. And then I maybe wrap a couple more times because I do a lot with my bail and I need lots of space to wrap the bail around up here. So I'll probably do it 1, 2 more times and then I'll clip it. And I don't know, I have a very OCD thing where I really want to make sure that everything is sturdy. Nobody's going to have to worry about anything coming apart during any of this. Or I mean, like once you actually have the finished piece and somebody buys it, I don't want, you know, it breaking in the future or anything. So I always tuck my wires in and make sure that everything's nice and tight. And very sturdy. Okay, so you've got this. So what I do now is I find the 2 wires right here in the very front and I separate them and pull them forward slightly, and it makes it easier if you find the very 2 in the very front right here. And I just kind of pull them forward just a little bit. And then back here, I take the 2 on this side and I lay them flat. And I take the 2 on this side and I lay them flat. And then now it's time to make the bail. So I straighten my wires out and then I just kind of space them just a little bit. And what I find easiest is when wrapping the bail and weaving, I take the tops of the wires and I just kind of bend them like this because it's a little easier for me. And all of this will definitely take practice. Like I've been wire wrapping for roughly 5 years now. I've had my good days and bad days. But yeah, I go ahead and fold these down and I just make sure that I like the width apart of the 2 wires. And then what I do next is I take a 24 gauge copper wire, just really thin, also from Rio Grande. They sell them in these 1 pound coils or spools, and it lasts forever. I'm going through the square wire pretty quick, but I just take it and I do a really long piece of this. I usually just stretch my arms out and do a piece that long. I usually end up cutting off quite a bit of wire, but I save all of my scrap wire and use it in other projects, so it's not just getting thrown away. Like I use like the small sections for my beaded necklaces, which I guess in the future I'll make a video on that. But I would rather have too much wire than not enough, because I've had wraps where I've run out of wire and you know, you basically, I'm sure there's ways that you could work around it, but I usually end up having to start over. All right, so what I do is I have just a little bit right here that I leave, and I kind of put it right here, and so I kind of line it up in the center of the wrap, and then I take the wire here, and this is just your basic weave, and I push it down as far as I can between the 2, and then I wrap it around this wire, through, and then back up under the other wire. And I make sure to push it down as much as possible. And then I'll show you a couple times, and then I'll probably go ahead and wrap this and then show you. I'll pause the video and show you the rest. But you just keep doing this all the way up. This is the first weave I've ever used, and it's really my favorite. I use it the most for my bail. Occasionally I'll do something a little different, but it's really the simplest one to learn. And yeah. So I'll show you a couple more times, and it'll start to look like that. And you want to try to not pull too tight because it will pull the wires together. I kind of let mine naturally come together, so I keep it kind of wide down here at the bottom, but the more that I wrap as I go up, it pulls the wires closer and closer together. You can do this with a really wide weave. I typically don't. I just kind of let it naturally pull together as I wrap up. So I've wrapped a little more. I did want to say, as you're wrapping your weave, periodically go ahead and kind of scoot the wires down just to make sure that they're good and tight. Yeah, I do that every probably 10 wraps or so. Okay, so I have now finished my weave, and I'll go ahead and show you how I finish it. So I straighten these wires back out up here on the top. Sometimes I'll take my pliers to go ahead and do it. But I straighten them back out, and then I take this wire and I wrap it around. I'm right-handed, so I always do it on the right side, but either side, it doesn't matter. And I wrap it around 3 times. Once again, you don't have to do it 3 times. That's just my my habit that I'm in now. And I clip it as close as I can, and then I'll take my pliers and tighten that down. And then you've got this wire down here. I leave this wire like this to where at the end I can go ahead and wrap it around and secure it down here. And I'll just kind of wrap it around this base part. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this whole thing is going to get covered. So I just wrap it around, and then I take my pliers once I get closer down here and tuck it through this hole. And clip it close and tuck it in. Okay, so this is what you've got now. So you have your weave here, and then these 4 wires out on the side. So I used to just made my bail by hand, the shape of it. But I highly recommend getting these pliers. You can buy them at your local arts and crafts store or order them online. But they really help to make the shape. I usually use the second from the biggest one because I don't want my bail to be huge, but I do want it big enough to where the necklace can go through it. And I just kind of bring this forward some, and then I pinch it with the pliers. And I wrap it around the back, and it should look like that. So then I bring, once again, I'm right-handed, so I always do it on the right side. I bring these up to where they don't get in my way, and I grab the bail here, and then I kind of make sure to pull this and push it as flat against it as I can get it. And every bail is different. Lately I've been trying to do 3 wraps around, but sometimes it doesn't always work like that. This one might be a little bit shorter. So it's a little bit shorter, but I do know a way that I can hide this just a little bit to where you can make it look a little bit better. But what I do before I close my bail is I go ahead and kind of take my pliers and tighten all of this and make sure that they're lined up nice and neat. And sometimes you can even take your pliers and kind of scoot it, because sometimes it's hard with this thick copper wire to really get it wrapped as tight as it can be. So I just kind of spin it around just a little bit. So see, that was able to fix it just a little bit more. And it's all a learning process. You know, a lot of it takes a lot of practice, and then you finally kind of, and you'll develop your own style and way of doing things. I just kind of tighten it down. So then I take these wires and I wrap them around the back. These two right here. I wrap them around and then I bring them up here. So sometimes this one seems to be a little bit short, so it's not going to wrap around all the way up here. So what I would do in this case is take it and I'm going to trim. Everyone is different. Never, you know, no two wraps are the same. I'm going to cut a little bit more off, and I can probably tuck it right here behind this wire. I can't tell you how many times used to I would have wraps that would frustrate me, and I would just call it a day and I'd put it down, and I wouldn't even do any more after that for a while. And now I just kind of go with the flow and accept the fact that every single one is different, but they all have a good outcome. Every now and again I'll still have a wrap where I'm like, no, I can't. I don't like it. But even if I don't like it, someone out there may still like it. So I've taken this other wire here and I've brought it up around the back of the bill, and I wrapped it around once, and then I'm going to tuck it in right here and then tighten it down. So that's what it's going to look like. And I usually try to kind of tighten this wire here to make it not as noticeable from the front. So I just kind of put my pliers there and do like a little zigzag. And then mash it flat. Okay, so then I'll take my pliers and kind of take the bail and just slightly twist them and just kind of try and make sure that it's nice and tight and that it's straight. And I'll even do it up here. Okay, so that's what it looks like from the front now. I'll bring these wires back down. That's what it looks like from the front.